Hey everyone, this week I'm going to create a video on group stages, as well as kind of emphasizing the dynamics of the working stage, and then go over Yalom's 11 curative factors. So starting with group stages, there's a few different models about how, group practitioners have made sense of the different stages that clients and members of groups go through. I'm going to talk about two in particular, and the first is just a really basic one. So the first is that there's a beginning stage, a working stage, and then a closing stage. Kind of seems really simple. So I'll first go into that, and then I'll talk about one more model. So I'm gonna, group members in the beginning stage are often, not always, but especially if it's a new group, a new counseling group, a new growth group, there's usually a bit of anxiety because students are just like, okay, we don't know what to expect. There's apprehension. There might be, they're not sure what the expectations are for the group. So those expectations are unclear, which leads to the anxiety and the apprehension as well. And it's kind of a time to build trust, build some relationships with each other. You don't have to do that in like a gimmicky way though, of just through like lots of like games or icebreakers. That doesn't necessarily have to be how you do that. You can do that in a transparent way, but there's a lot of, everyone kind of finds their style for that. In some of these videos, I'll talk a little bit more about different stages and techniques as well. And what I've also noticed that the book that I'm drawing from, the group counseling book, uh, it doesn't really talk as much about this, but I've noticed in my experience working with some groups that there tend to be like these early alliances. So for example, I was working with a group and it seemed like too premature that there are certain members that were just kind of resonating and connecting with each other really early on. And throughout time, those early alliances or bonds kind of broke down. But I think at the start, how I made sense of it at least is like I think due to the anxiety, they're trying to find a sense of connection with someone or some other individuals in the group. So these early alliances formed were like, yes, I resonate with what you're saying. Yeah, I connect. So it's like, so I think that's important to just be aware of. Not that we necessarily have to call it out or address it in any clear way, but there's early alliances that might not last. They likely won't, because people will grow out of the anxiety of the early stages and they might be able to grow out of those early alliances. So just something to be considering there. So the working stage is the stage where, as it states, the most of the work is being done, the growth, the change, the healing. Depending on the type of group, that's the key, you know, stage for all groups though. But what the work looks like might be a little bit different. So, for example, like I said, I think in the working stages where a lot of times the breakdown of those initial alliances might occur, and it doesn't have to be any like combative or full of conflict or anything. Sometimes it is. Sometimes those early alliances are dealt with that way, but a lot of times it's just like a subtle breakdown of like, okay, they grow out of those relationships, those are no longer needed. And I think those early alliances break down because the group is getting to a place of deeper trust. They trust the larger group. Hopefully they get to this place of larger trust where they can take new risks. They can take risks in sharing information about themselves or sharing dynamics they're struggling with that are vulnerable. But through that if as there's enough trust, they can take those steps into the dark and take steps into that vulnerable space where a lot of the healing occurs. So that deeper look inward might occur during that working stage, especially for counseling and growth groups. Uh, so that deeper, there's one actually example of this. I was teaching a class, but it's really similar to, there's a lot of group dynamics in it because it's for students who are on academic probation for a variety of reasons, So I was teaching a course on that, and it seemed like kind of near the middle of the semester, students started to realize, okay, these people aren't judging me. These people are also, they struggled just like me for a variety of different reasons, but they started to look a little more closely at, okay, what are my beliefs about myself? How did that hold me back from academic success? So it could be that like my self-esteem's really low. I think I'm garbage, right? I don't think much of myself at all. Or my family of origin didn't think much of me. They always told me, nope, you're not going to succeed. You're going to fail. So whatever it was, they were able to like kind of take a step into that more vulnerable space. But as they found community and connection, even in that vulnerable space, there's a lot of growth and healing in that moment. So that's one example of what the working stage can look like. Uh, so one line that I appreciated from the book on page 40, it says that in the working stage, the leader must pay particular attention to the interaction patterns and attitudes of the members towards each other and toward the leader. So I think that's just one thing to be looking at is like, so the dynamics of the group are often going to be kind of shifting and changing in this working stage, and it could be changing how they view you as the leader and how they're viewing each other. So we need to be, that's kind of leading into the process. We need to be focusing on the process of what's happening in the group, not necessarily the words that are spoken or, the topics that are being addressed, but like, how are they communicating with each other? Who's talking to who, and why? What's being avoided? There can be important things to be aware of in that, emphasizing the process over the content. Then lastly, with the closing stage, this is a place where, the group's ending soon. So it's termination. How do people say goodbye? And sometimes people have really bad experiences around endings of relationships. This trusting place and these trusting relationships are likely, like, they're for sure ending. Maybe some of the relationships will continue in other ways, but they're not going to be the same. So this is a time to say those goodbyes and kind of work through those ending dynamics. And it can also be a time for synthesizing and transferring what was learned in the group to outside relationships and building outside relationships to kind of support the person outside of the group experience. So really quick, I just wanted to share at least one other way of conceptualizing these stages of groups. And on page 41 in the Jacobs et al. Text, it talks about the forming stage, which is synonymous with the beginning stage that I just described, and then storming, norming, and performing. So to me, I make sense of that as kind of the three sub stages of the working stage. So storming is like, okay, there might be conflict with each other. They're like trying to figure out, okay, who are we as a new group? That can be subtle conflict, or it can be like really kind of abrasive, that they're making sense, kind of airing grievances and working through things, which can be really important to get to a place of trust, the authentic trust. So storming, the norming, okay, this new norm of how we're functioning as a group, then that leads to performing, doing the work that initially brought the group together. And then adjourning is a synonym for closing. So just another way to make sense of that. Just a few things. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but just maybe to prime your brains for a few things to be looking for during the working stage, or that storming, norming, performing sub stages. I kind of alluded to some of these already, but I just wanted to list them out. So a few things to be considering: who talks, who's talking, and how often. That sometimes that's really important. You might have someone who talks very little, and so it's kind of uncomfortable, or there's anxiety for other members when they don't know what this person's thinking. Also, there might be a dominating person who's really talking a lot, who needs to be cut off and uh, kind of slowed down to make space for others. And it's important to avoid this pattern of a member talks, then the leader talks, then a member talks, then the leader talks, then a member. So the leader sometimes needs to just get out of the way. Like, I think earlier on, sure, the leader might be a bit more directive and involved, but sometimes in the working stage, the group is ready to interact with each other just back and forth a bit more. It's not that we need to be just like, oh, like sleeping in our chair as a leader. Uh, but sometimes if this pattern of like, okay, one member speaks, then it's the leader's turn, then it's a member's turn, then it's the leader's turn, that can kind of hold back the group process. So at some point, we likely need to recognize, okay, I need to get out of the way. We need to be aware of alliances and how those could alter and change. I've kind of alluded to that already, but this might lead to some like individuals teaming up against other individuals. We need to be aware of rescuing. So some members might want to rescue other members when they're in this place of pain, or talking about some hurt and some areas that need healing. And I think the desire to provide comfort can be helpful at times, but if it's like, oh, you're strong, you can do it. No, don't say that about yourself. You're strong. Like you're going to do so great. Like if it's it can come across as like this minimizing of people's experience. So we need to be really kind of thoughtful of how our members providing comfort. Is it this cheerleading or this rescuing that's unhelpful? Like, so we need to be considering that. Three last things is advice giving. You might notice that members are wanting to give a lot of advice to each other. They might get mad at you as the leader. You might be the metaphoric or the symbolic uh, parent, for example, or just you have some power in the relationship, so they might need to revolt against you, and they're playing out like, how do I have this authority figure that I need to, maybe there's previous authority figures in their life that they had really negative experiences towards, so that it might be that they're going to be displacing some of this onto you, so you need to kind of be ready for that. And then avoidance. They might want to avoid certain topics and certain experiences and process dynamics. So just a few thoughts of some of those working stage dynamics. I was hoping to have a little bit more time to go into the curative factors, but I'm at least just going to reference them. So Victor Yalom talked about, these curative factors that need to be present in groups in order for groups to heal and be successful. So it's on page 49, the listing of the 11 curative factors. So I at least wanted to just name them all really quick. So the first is that a group to be successful needs to instill hope. So members need to feel like, okay, I'm feeling more hopeful about my life because I participated. Then the other is universality. So I'm not alone. There's other people who are having similar experiences. Are they exact same experiences? No, but there's enough like, okay, there's some universal experience going on here. That can be really important. Imparting information can be important. Altruism, that we can give and take from each other. Like I can give to other members and help them, can be helpful for me as well. This one I've talked about in another video, but it's a corrective recapitulation of the primary family group. So basically what that means is the family of origin issues that the group members bring into the session could be reenacted. So once again, the example of a parent figure, if there's some negative experiences of a controlling parent, group members might like see you as controlling, even if you're really not, but they might interpret certain things as like, oh, they're trying to control me. They're saying this thing, or they're redirecting or cutting someone off because they're trying to control us. So like sometimes that dynamic needs to be played out. They need to be, let those early family norms and patterns play out, but then hopefully reorganize it. Like, oh, I don't have to stay in that way of being in this family of origin dynamic. I can learn through that. So that's part of our role as the leaders, to call attention to that, of like, oh, it seems like maybe some of your previous ways of being are being put on this individual or this person. Like there can be various ways of doing that, but that can be important to work through, to correct those previous experiences. The Tiber and Tiber called that being a corrective emotional experience. So instead of just kind of playing in the negative pattern, that it corrects it through the group experience. The next few is developing socialization techniques, so learning social skills, imitating positive behaviors in others, and also interpersonal learning is important. Like, how do I interact with people in a new way that's hopefully more helpful? Then group cohesiveness. How do I feel close with a group of people? Some individuals might not feel that any other place. Then catharsis, being able to work through and express and let out these held back feelings and experiences. And then last, that Yalom talks about, are existential factors. That group can be a place to work through accepting responsibility for your life, finding meaning in life, working through death anxiety. That can be like, sometimes in close groups, those kind of core human elements can surface. So those are a few ideas, a few reactions to group stages, the working stage, and the curative factors. So let me know if you have questions or comments. Thanks.